Welcome. This is Real Healing, Real Awakening with Phil Golding.
Welcome to the 5th episode of Real Healing, Real Awakening. I hope you enjoyed and benefited from my interview with my friend Sinval in last week's episode. I hope you gained some inspiration and awareness from that. I said last week that I will be dealing with some of the more important issues of the 5-step process for healing, wisdom and empowerment. And so I will be doing that in this show. I will be working with what I call the blind spots in the human ego. In other words, the areas in our life where we get most confused, where we get stuck in that confusion and can't see a way out. It's the confusion that causes the most suffering, that creates the most chaos in our society, that really causes the problems in human nature. We get so stuck in this confusion, in fact, that on a collective level we start to call it normal and think there is no other way of being. But I'm going to really focus on these areas and show you how they create the suffering in the human experience. And most importantly, I will also show you a way out of this confusion. Firstly though, I want to talk a little bit about the purpose of these programs. The purpose of Real Healing, Real Awakening. If you have listened to the previous programs, particularly the first 3, you would have realized that they go quite deep and are packed full of information and even a bit intense. There's a real reason for this, and that is that they're designed not so much for entertainment, but for transformation and inspiration. These programs are for those of you who may be struggling with human difficulties but truly want to overcome them, really want to take responsibility and make the most of your life, to really learn what life's about, discover its meaning and turn all of that to your advantage. So these programs require you to go deep. They're there to confront the ego. They're there to open you up, to make you think. They're there to offer you real solutions and real doorways of change for your life. That's the purpose of Real Healing, Real Awakening. I'm on a mission, in other words, to really make a difference for people. As I mentioned in the first program, I've suffered quite a bit in my own life. I experienced chronic depression in my adolescence and early adult years, and all the emotional turmoil that goes with that. I also struggled around the issues of relationships, as so many of us do. I've suffered many disappointments and anger, and a deep fear of rejection, and felt locked up in these emotions as though there was no way out. But there has always been a deeper part of me that believed there had to be an answer, there had to be a truth to life, there had to be a higher consciousness, a way to master this life experience. And that truth had to be within me somehow. So even in my darkest moments, there was a part of me that was still searching, knowing, hoping, believing that the answers had to be there somewhere, somehow. And this indomitable desire to find those answers, this indomitable belief, led me to find those answers. Seek and ye shall find, as Christ said. So along with the suffering, I've also experienced the power of the transformation, the opening myself up to life, to my higher awareness and to others, and to discover that there's this heart inside, there's this incredible power of love and awareness. This is what I wish to bring to you. This is what I want to awaken in your hearts. I want you to come to experience and to know, as I have, that this heart, this soul, this Buddha nature, this higher self within us is the most powerful thing in life. There's nothing in life that is more powerful than it. There is no experience that this greater part of ourself can't overcome. It is ultimate power. It is ultimate love. It is ultimate wisdom. And this is what real healing, real awakening is about. So step up to the mirror with me, if you dare, and take a look inside. Open up deeply. Let go of what you think you know. Don't throw it away, but loosen it up a bit. Give it space. Prepare the ground for something new to come into your mind, into your awareness. Get ready to see life, perceive it, feel it in a different way. After all, you can't expect new results from the tight old conditioning and habits and beliefs that have been running your life up till now and creating the life that you don't want. Obviously, new information, new ways of seeing life, a higher perspective is what is going to break you out of that old prison, that old spell of confusion. Before we begin, I'll run through the 5-step process for you again. I encourage you to review the first 3 programs whenever you can. If you are not familiar with it, the first 3 programs contain the crux of the 5-step process, the core teachings that I want to bring across to you. This show is designed to take those teachings in an even deeper level, to focus on some of the core issues that are involved. It's very important to go over this information regularly if you want it to make a difference to your life. It's the same with studying anything. You don't go along to a college, to a university, and say, give me the exams. I want a degree in such and such, without having first studied and spending many years studying that subject. Naturally, you're not going to pass. It's the same with life. Life is giving you an exam every day. How are you going? Are you passing that exam? This is about learning how to pass, how to understand the subject. And then the next day, you've got a bit more information. You can do more with the test, with that opportunity that life is offering you. How do you know you have passed the test? That's a very obvious question, isn't it? Ultimately, that's up to you to determine. But let's say freedom from fear is a good marker, or at least the ability to face that fear and push through it. Another good indicator, perhaps, that you are starting to master this process is the ability not to take yourself too seriously. This is a good indication that fear is not taking you over. Joy is another good indicator. By joy, I mean something deeper than happiness. Happiness, let's say, you could use that word as a description of getting something you want. Oh, I've got something I want. I'm really happy now. But there's an opposite to that. Oh, I've lost what I want. I'm really sad now. Joy gets beyond that. Joy is a higher state of being. It is a quality of soul, of our higher self. It comes from a deep sense of security that we feel as we surrender and center ourselves more and more into our higher self. It is a state of completeness, a feeling of that unconditional love, that essence of supreme consciousness. It comes from a sense of equanimity, where we're not dependent on outside things to make us happy. We just are. There are other qualities that are from soul, from higher self, such as this, that you will come to feel more and more as you gain a sense of self, a greater identity in this deeper state of being. So let's have a look at the 5-step process before we go on to those core issues that I was alluding to previously. The 5-step process is based on the 2 fundamental laws of consciousness. The first law I describe as unconditional love. The second law is total personal responsibility. These two laws of consciousness go together like yin and yang. To combine them in a personal way, you could say it is accepting the full responsibility to love yourself unconditionally, to become consciously aware of your place as a higher consciousness taking care of your human self. And in so doing, drawing on the supreme consciousness, the life force itself of unconditional love, rather than relying on the world to fulfill us, which is inherently unreliable. These two ultimate laws of consciousness form the basis of steps 1 and 2. Step 1 is total self-acceptance, and step 2, total personal responsibility. So it is that responsibility to care for yourself. By being actively committed to yourself in this way, uncovers the ego's negative conditioning, which invariably is based in self-condemnation. More often than not, this self-condemnation is below our awareness. The ego has covered it up by blaming others, by trying to find fulfillment through material things, by being a victim, by seeing itself as powerless. But ultimately, all this is about seeing itself as less than what it is. We don't realize how incredibly powerful and wonderful we are. By being this loving guardian to our own human self, awakens that power of love within us, that power of love from a higher life force that flows through every human being. We become the representative of this love to our own human self. We are endeavouring to literally be this love, and by doing this, committing ourselves to this, practicing it, experiencing it, we are literally invoking this love into ourselves. We are lifting ourselves up into its consciousness. Consciously caring for ourselves every day, even in simple ways, starts to loosen the chains of self-condemnation and the confusion that is created in our minds. Step 3, let go and tune in, is about applying steps 1 and 2 to my own inward journey, my own journey of healing and self-realization or clarity. It is about embracing my vulnerable humanness, my fears and my insecurities, opening them up, bringing them out into my awareness and embracing them with my heart, with my compassion, with my sense of self-care. And in doing so, I am able to literally be the parent of my own self, my own vulnerable humanness, which is so much like a child, like an inner child. We do this through the doorway of feeling. We're learning to pay attention to what our feelings are telling us, because feelings do not lie, they're not confused, they're a pure indication of what the mind is up to, whether it's the higher mind through the higher pure feelings of love, or the lower mind of our vulnerable human self through disturbing emotions. But when I can open my heart to my feelings, to sit with them, to look into them, write about them, contemplate on them, experience them, listen to them, the nature of my mind and its confusions, or the higher guidance of my soul and higher self is revealed to me. What is also revealed to me is that deep intuitive insight that comes from my higher self, that reveals to me a greater way of seeing and perceiving my life. Step 4, live in the now, is about putting the clarity that is learned from step 3 into action. Step 4 teaches us that we can only live in the now. We can learn from the past, we can make plans for the future, but life can only be lived now, and the now of every moment. Our future, in fact, is created by what we do now. If we waste our time worrying about the future, then we're going to neglect the opportunities of the now. We're just simply not going to see them. If we continue to regret, be the victim of our past, then again we are wasting the time, we are wasting our present moment, and the past is then going to interfere with our future. In order to create the life that we want, we must embrace what is directly in front of us. We must embrace what the day brings us, work with it, accept it, whilst at the same time taking care of the reactions that come from our humanness when it's confronted with the difficulties of the day. Our humanness runs on habit, runs on old programs. It can't help doing that, but our higher consciousness, like a wise and loving parent taking care of a child, can take care of, mentor, bring up, educate, transform that child of our human self and lift it into the heart, into the high consciousness of our conscious awareness and beyond. None of this is about having to be perfect. This is a process, a journey for human beings. What we are endeavouring to do is align ourselves to, identify with those ultimate perfect principles of unconditional love and total personal responsibility. In this way, we can slowly but surely, through our efforts of every day, no matter how small those efforts are, providing they are consistent, we can brick by brick build a very, very strong foundation for our own life. When we keep showing up every day to life with this process in our heart, with our determination strong, we can't help but grow and mature in wisdom. We can't help but step by step heal our confusion and our emotional woundedness. And inevitably we are going to grow in personal empowerment. In this process, therefore, there is no failure. There is simply an experience to embrace, accept and learn from. When we open our heart to life in this way, mistakes become incredibly valuable to us. They become this marvellous learning experience that we simply grow stronger on, rather than beat ourselves up or feel ashamed or worry about what other people think of us. We discover, we claim, we learn, we realise that we are the ultimate and really the only authority in our own life. Of course, we have to get on with others and obey normal civil laws and laws of life in a way. But we have the power of choice and we are the authority of that choice in our lives. I choose what I wish to do every day. And as the wonderful teacher named Krishnamurti taught us in the 20th century, that there really is only one choice, and that choice is love. Every motivation that comes from true unconditional love is always going to be of benefit to you, providing that love is about honouring yourself on a very deep core level. When you do that, you're in a much better position to know how to honour others. Ultimately, the biggest obstacle in our life is our own self. And when we can embrace, care for, open up, transform our own self, that's most of our problems solved. Step 5, live the process, reminds us that this is a process for life. Mind maintenance, caring for our mind, should never cease. We should always be consciously looking after our mind, recognizing that our mind, with its habits and conditionings and its blind instincts, must be consciously managed. Otherwise, we end up just simply being taken down the track of old habits that have no benefit for what is appropriate for the now. Consciousness is the manager of your life, and it is just like cleaning your teeth every day or having a bath. You've got to clean out your mind. You've got to look after it like a good gardener. Weed out the weeds. Put in the right information, the right fertilizer, in other words, for creative thought, for awareness, for inspiration. You tend your own mind like you tend the garden. What do you want to grow? Just let weeds come and grow indiscriminately? Or do you want to choose what is going to grow in your mind? Grow flowers, grow vegetables. That's what a gardener does. It makes a choice. The gardener chooses what they're going to do with that garden. You, as the manager of your mind, you are going to choose what goes into your mind and what comes out of it, what you create in your life. You are going to choose the life that you want. It's time now to have a deeper look at some of the fundamental issues around healing and awakening. What I call the ego's blind spots. The confusions in our mind that keep creating the life that we don't want. Or maybe we did get the life that we want, but then discovered that it was still full of suffering and unsatisfactoriness, as it's called in Buddhism. So how to create the life that we do want, but to know what sort of a life to create that will also be fulfilling, satisfying, successful. There are 4 things I want to look at in particular. The first is a deeper look at those 2 fundamental laws of life, unconditional love and total personal responsibility. The second blind spot that I want to look at is a question that I'm often asked. Is all this self-caring, self-searching, self-healing, is that all just being self-centered and self-indulgent? Well, of course it is. No, I'm just kidding. The third ego blind spot that I want to look at is what I call breaking the victim spell. The belief that we are a victim of life's circumstances, that we are somehow powerless or unlucky, or a pawn in some more powerful being's malevolent game. The fourth ego blind spot that I will more deeply go into is the dynamic between healing and justice. There is a strong belief that I can't have healing until I gain justice. That is just not the case. Healing does not require justice. So I'm going to have a deeper look at that, and this relates to the third point as well. This week we will deal with the first 2 issues. The remaining issues will be studied next week. So let's start with unconditional love and total personal responsibility, the 2 fundamental laws of consciousness. If you want to transform your life, it is clear that you need to be aligned to a very powerful force. Now clearly, if you're going to align yourself to a power, you're better off going with the ultimate one. And unconditional love is the ultimate power. There are few people who would argue against at least the ideal of this. The arguments tend to be based more around, is unconditional love real? Is it possible? Is it attainable? Academics may indeed have a great time debating such a subject for years, but we don't have years to get on with transforming our life. We want to do it now. So there is an element of faith that is involved here. This faith, nonetheless, can have a very solid foundation. Look at the human qualities that flow from unconditional love. Even a moderate degree of this love, such as integrity, harmony, goodwill, compassion, kindness. Observe people who display these qualities. Pay attention to the atmosphere around them. How other people feel in their presence. Pay attention to your own feelings when you're in their presence also. When you do, you will see a harmonious atmosphere. People who are happy, people who feel fulfilled, who feel loved. There you will see and experience unconditional love at work. It may not be perfect. You may not see enlightened masters walking around radiant in their glory. However, you will see the power of unconditional love even in moderate levels, and the way it transforms the whole atmosphere of this place, of this environment. You will see that when it comes to creating an atmosphere and environment that is most conducive to the well-being of the greatest number, you will find that unconditional love is the key. It is what works. What works, works. It's as simple as that. The universal life force of unconditional love is right there in its full power. It's up to human beings to tap into that power, to channel it through them, to be it, to invoke it through our own consciousness. There is no need to wait until you find some perfect example of unconditional love through some human being before you are willing to consider that this ideal is real. The sun at times may be obscured by clouds, but it's still there nonetheless, shining in its full glory. In regards to human consciousness, we are clouded all the time. At this level of human history, there are very few enlightened masters to observe. There are indeed great examples, such as Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, just to name a few. They aren't perfect beings, they aren't enlightened masters, but they have a very powerful ability to be centered in the ideal of unconditional love. They are being this, and that power of personal responsibility. They take total ownership of their life, of their mind. Such people don't look to others to make them feel secure or to be happy. They rely on their own inner resource of unconditional love. They channel through the universal life force of unconditional love through their own consciousness. Even a moderate ability to channel unconditional love through one's own consciousness can create beautiful things. It is pointless quibbling about whether unconditional love is real or not. Its evidence is everywhere. You discover it for yourself in the most intimate way, by being this love, by doing your best to put it into practice, and learning about yourself in the process. It says in the book of James in the Bible, faith without works is dead. What it's talking about is faith has to be put into action in order for it to reveal the power that you have faith in. Unconditional love is like that. If you go back to my first program, which is centered around steps 1 and 2, I place a lot of importance on doing your best to be love, be the representative of unconditional love, your best perception, of your best awareness of this. Academia thinks it can continue to talk about and analyze and somehow get to a point of knowing what something is like just by that. But experience is utterly essential. To use a simple analogy, if you want to know what it's like to swim in the ocean, you can analyze that all you like. You can talk about it for 100 years, but are you really going to know what that experience is like? Diving into the ocean may be a more immediate experience than being able to experience the essence of unconditional love. Nonetheless, if you display enough faith in the ideal, in the principle of unconditional love, you will take the responsibility for doing your best to study it, to study its principles, to study those who you feel are good exemplars of this unconditional love. And then, armed with some awareness, some knowledge, you put that knowledge to practice. You do your best to be that and experience that. That experience will reveal perhaps how poorly you are at being unconditional love, but nevertheless, by practicing the first step of self-acceptance, I accept my humanness, I accept my best attempt at being unconditional love, and embrace it and do my best to learn from it, you can't help but start to expand in your experience, your field, your knowing of that very principle. By practicing it in this way, you will literally experience the power of unconditional love in the way you treat your own self. What have you got to lose? How bad is it to treat yourself with loving compassion over an extended period of time? Is that not a good thing to do? You are not required to do it perfectly. You may start your day with perfect intentions of being unconditional love, and you may do very well at that up till 10 o'clock that morning, and then something comes along, triggers an old emotional reaction, your old conditioning comes up. But what is that? Is that a failure to condemn yourself about? Not at all. It is an opportunity to stop, be aware. I've slipped out of my centeredness again. What was I meant to be doing again? What intention did I set this morning? That's right. To be unconditional love to my own human self. What a wonderful opportunity. Here is this vulnerable human self in pain right now. Let me embrace you. There it is, unconditional love. It's always there. All you need to do is remember. It's irrelevant how many times you forget. If you forget 1,000 times a day, it's 1,000 times to remember once again. Or even if you just remember at the end of the day, I forgot all about that unconditional love. It doesn't matter. Every time you remember, every time you have that ideal in your mind, you have set a perfect intention to be unconditional love. Inevitably, that intention will grow in determination within you if you don't let it go. It doesn't matter if you drop it, if you forget, if you slip up. What you can do is come back to that mark, that base, that powerful intention to love myself unconditionally, to take total personal responsibility, to love my vulnerable, confused humanness unconditionally. Can you see here the importance of that very, very powerful intention, the importance of the highest ideal, the absoluteness of unconditional love? Can you see how it is so important? It's not that you have to somehow live up to it and then be condemned if you don't. We're human. We're not going to live up to it in that way. But we have that incredible, powerful, wonderful, universal life force, that incredible ideal to continue to come back to learn from, to grow with. This is the important thing. When you truly believe, when you truly consider that unconditional love in its absolute glory, in its absolute incredible reality, incredibleness, whatever, is real, then you are opening up an opportunity to learn more and more about it. Do not limit unconditional love with your own perceptions, with your own human mind. Keep it blazing in its glory up on the high mountain, radiating, whatever. It's essential to keep that in its absolute fundamental form. In this way, the reality of unconditional love is revealed to you, even though you're not sure about it at first. When you consider that it is absolutely real, that it is absolute, that there is no negativity, there's no dark side, there's no opposite, there's nothing you have to do to live up to it, to qualify for it, other than to exist. When you keep turning up to that ideal, when you keep opening your heart to it, your mind to it, by learning and studying and observing and talking about it, when you consider it to be real, the fact that it is real means that you are going to invoke it more and more and more into your own consciousness. You're going to put yourself into a position of experiencing it. And through that experience, we gain more and more confidence, more and more conviction, more and more faith, more and more wisdom, poise, power, maturity, and healing. In this way, every time I make a mistake, every time I forget, actually gives me the opportunity to be unconditional love in an even more conscious, more powerful way. My humanness is actually aiding my conscious awareness in its opportunity to be unconditional love to my own self. And as I am just simply doing my best to be that, as imperfect as that may be, I'm nevertheless growing, evolving, awakening, deepening my feeling, my grasp, my understanding of being unconditional love. It is an inevitable, growing, evolving reality. What I need to do is accept my humanness. This is the key. As soon as I start beating myself up and condemning myself because I'm not some perfect ideal of some standard of who knows what, that is when I get stuck. But when I let go of that and recognize I have full authority over my own life, my own mind, the way I treat myself, this is total personal responsibility. And when I can stop, accept my humanness, accept my mistake, open my heart, embrace that, face the shame, face the guilt, face all of those things that are about ego confusion. They're not the truth. They're not the truth about you or I. We are in fact absolutely, completely, totally worthy of unconditional love. Always, always have been, always will be. That is unconditional love. It can't be any other way, no matter how human we may be at any given time. But we have the power of conscious awareness, which is above and beyond the vulnerable, lower, instinctual, conditioned, habit-bound human mind. At that point of conscious awareness, we can set marvelous, beautiful, perfect intentions and do our best then to practice that intention. And inevitably, we will grow into that ideal. You can't lose. Total acceptance of our own human self is like forgiving ourselves for being human. It's the same thing. I can forgive myself for my human mistake, reset the moment, center myself back into my intention, the ideal of unconditional love, my best perception of it anyway, and start again, and again, and again, and again. I can study it, I can talk about it, I can meditate on it, I can contemplate on it, and then I can step out in a new day with that intention deepened, reinforced, greater clarity, do my best to practice unconditional love once again. No matter how imperfect I am, I can forgive that imperfection, accept myself as human. There is unconditional love in action, in my consciousness, the way I am embracing my own self. It's not that difficult when you really think about it. It's a matter of doing the best you can. The difficulty, of course, is running up against our confusions, our old habits, our old programs that make it seem like unconditional love is just simply out of reach, pie in the sky, not real. This is where faith is very important. This is where we must never give up. It is essential to take it for granted that if our experience is unsatisfactory, if things are not working out the way we think they should, it's not that unconditional love is not real. It's not that total personal responsibility is not possible. It is simply because the ego is still confused. It can't see past its confusion. So it's important to stop, to step back, to pause, to look inwards. There you will see the seeds of the problem within your own confusion. And that's not bad. That's in fact great. It's an incredible opportunity. You don't have to go very far to work on the problem. You don't have to change somebody else. You don't have to argue with anybody else. You don't have to climb a mountain. All you got to do is look within. Do some reading, do some journaling, talk it out with somebody. Answers will come. Your higher self, unconditional love, supreme consciousness is right there, always ready to filter through a little gap in your consciousness, a little opening, and bing, you have that epiphany, that awakening, that realization. The power is always within you. So is the confusion. So there's the solution, right there side by side with the problem. Very simple, really. Very, very simple. It's just the ego is very, very confused. It is still operating from a child's way of thinking. A child is looked after by others. A child is dependent. A child is vulnerable. That part of our awareness, our mind, our humanness has not yet grown up, has not yet developed that ability to be self-responsible, self-actualizing, enlightened on an important level. This is why personal responsibility is the companion of unconditional love. It is the recognition that the power is within, that I have the power to transform my mind. I am not a child, I'm a being of conscious awareness. I've grown out of my childhood into the full capacity of the full potential of consciousness, and it's up to me to awaken that potential, to bring it into reality. Let's have a look now at the second point I wish to cover, and that is the question, isn't all this talk about self-love really just about being selfish? Surely we should concentrate on loving others. In reality, I'm not talking about being selfish. I am talking about personal responsibility, self-responsibility. I'm talking about filling up our inner tank of love and fulfillment to where it should be. I'm talking about returning to a healthy balance. Instead, we have a society of people who are continually running on empty. When this is the case, we try to fill ourselves up by taking from others or from the environment in destructive ways. This taking, this unhealthy dependency and endless materialism loses touch with the important things in life. For instance, we think our children need more and more sophisticated toys rather than the essential lifeblood of unconditional love. As a result, we confuse our children so much that they become dependent on more and more material things without realizing that it is unconditional love that they are really longing for. In the process, they don't learn how to love themselves and instead stay selfishly dependent on others. Therefore, self-neglect, in other words, not taking responsibility for your fears and insecurities, by not taking responsibility for your mind, by not looking inwards, by not being aware and intimate of the way your mind is thinking and reacting, is actually the cause of selfishness. When we spend time working on ourselves, focusing on our own humanness, we are actually being the good, responsible, compassionate parent to our own confused and childlike lower mind, our human mind, our ego. We are not indulging our human confusions, like spoiling a child. We are taking responsibility for them, like a parent who accepts the responsibility to be the mentor, the wise disciplinarian for that child, the one who guides the child into better states of being. To neglect this essential self-responsibility is in fact irresponsibility. It is indulging in denial of what it takes to raise our consciousness into the state of being that enables us to truly love others unconditionally. This lack of awareness of our own mind is regarded in Buddhism as one of the key causes of suffering. Because of this lack of awareness, Because of this lack of active mentoring of our own human mind, the confusions of our human mind are allowed to run riot. This is plainly evident in the greed and the fear and the hate that consumes so many people and creates so much strife and hardship in this world. If you neglect your child, if you do not actively take responsibility to mentor your child, the consequences are obvious. The same goes for your own human mind. I often use the analogy of a horse rider. Our human body-mind is like the horse. Our conscious awareness is like the rider. In a way, as the rider, we are given this horse after it has been trained. That training is dependent on the skill of our parents and the environment of our childhood conditioning. But this horse now belongs to us. We are the rider. We have to take responsibility for whatever comes with this horse. This horse may be poorly trained and may have lots of bad habits. If we let the horse just go as it will, we will end up somewhere where we don't want to be. It reminds me of a horse I once rode at one of these trail rides you go as a tourist. You know how the horses all follow one another and don't necessarily do what you want it to do. And this horse didn't particularly feel like having me on its back. So it would brush up close to any low-lying branch it could find to try to knock me off. As the rider, I had to take strong control of this horse. I had to basically take charge and manage this horse's negative tendencies. Otherwise, I'd end up on the ground, probably with a broken collarbone or something like that. It's the same in regards to taking responsibility for the mind. And we need a map, we need a guide for taking responsibility. There is a natural guide for good horsemanship that has been developed over thousands of years. There is a natural guide for managing the human mind that has been developed over thousands of years. And the core principles of that are unconditional love and total personal responsibility. It is ridiculous to deny this, and it is equally ridiculous to deny the importance of self-mastery. And self-mastery cannot be achieved unless you actively engage the mind, unless you have an active, intimate, conscious, personal relationship with your own human self. I have also observed that some of the old school terminologies, old school by meaning old wisdom schools, such as Buddhism and the old wisdom teachings of the past that is still with us, can create some confusion. I'm meaning terms such as selflessness, self-forgetfulness, and self-cherishing being regarded as something as negative in some Buddhist teachings. But it is important not to misunderstand these terms. Self-forgetfulness is not talking about neglecting self or denying responsibility of your mind. It is not talking about not looking within. It does not mean that. What it is talking about is not indulging oneself on an ego level, not being a victim, not complaining, not blaming, not indulging our lower nature, our old negative conditioning. That's what self-forgetfulness means. It does not mean don't waste your time looking within. Don't waste your time looking at your past. Don't waste your time looking at your thoughts and feelings. It is the opposite of that, in fact. You can only forget yourself once you have processed the things that are occupying your mind in a negative way. Just like you can only find harmony in your house when the children are happy and content, and they're only going to be happy and content when they're properly looked after. The same goes for selflessness. That term is used in a very similar way. Selflessness is often used in terms of serving others without thought of your own self. But you can't serve others without really taking care of yourself, without learning to keep yourself balanced, full within. Otherwise, you're just going to end up running on empty, crashing and burning, or getting resentful of those who you are trying to help. Social worker syndrome is one of the terms that are used in the helping profession. It is about counsellors, social workers that are not looking after themselves, that are getting caught up in their work, that are taking an over sense of responsibility for what's going on around them. So they end up burning out. Selflessness does not promote burning out. It's not talking about neglecting yourself. The same goes for parenthood. Due to self-neglect or a misperceived understanding of selflessness, mothers, for instance, often empty themselves out, leave themselves bereft of life energy and identity in their over-responsibility toward their children. Women often lose themselves in their role as mother, and when it comes to their children leaving home and not needing them in the same way anymore, they end up suffering an identity crisis and even physically break down due to being just completely emptied out. Losing ourselves in our work can have the same result. In fact, it applies to every situation in life. Selflessness can only be achieved once your human self is mastered, is held within the heart and soul of your own conscious awareness. Your human self is lifted up and being replenished, filled, nurtured, looked after by the universal life force of which you are plugged into through your own conscious awareness, through your own total personal responsibility to love yourself unconditionally. In this way, you can give in a much more powerful, much more sustainable, and much more effective way. The term self-cherishing, used in a negative sense in some Buddhist teachings, is exactly the same. It means indulging your ego. It's a problematic term because I like to think as cherishing as something beautiful, something very positive. So it's taken that word and turned it into a negative, which I think is a confusing interpretation of the Buddhist teachings into English. Nevertheless, that term is stuck. So it's important to understand the deeper meaning of that term and not to be misled by it. It is about not spoiling that inner child that is within us, not indulging our lower nature. It does not mean that being consciously aware of our own human self and loving that human self unconditionally in a self-responsible way is a bad thing. It is not talking about that. In fact, Buddhism is all about that. That is the whole point of meditation. That is the whole point of the Dharma. Self-responsibility is the keystone of Buddhism, and you can't be self-responsible if you don't know your own mind. Your entire life is lived through your mind, so if you don't know what your mind is up to, you have no control over your life. It is essential that you are the master of your mind. If so, you are then the master of your life. That concludes this episode of Real Healing, Real Awakening. Remember, next week I'm going to focus on the remaining ego blind spots that I pointed out. That is, breaking the victim spell, which is really about the dynamics of self-empowerment, and also the issue of healing not depending on justice. Please feel free to email me any questions you wish addressed in the show. My email is on my website, and the link to that is on my page on this website here. But just to let you know, my email is info@innerharmony.com.au, and the website is www.innerharmony.com.au. Don't forget the AU on the end. That's the Australian designation. Also on my website, on the Philosophy School pages, you will find lots of very useful information, and also books I have written on the subject of real healing and real awakening. Be a guardian angel to your own self, and love will always warm your heart. because wisdom is intelligent love in action.